Needing everyone's support here. So this is a partial video response, partial inspired video from Blue Sage, the animated pagan who was talking about the Abrahamic faiths and some problems within them and his own deconversion and stuff, or at least a couple of the reasons why he left the Abrahamic traditions. And so I was like, hey, like I talked about my deconversion on my last channel, but I didn't really go into a lot of detail, and maybe we could do that. It's kind of like I said, half inspired, um, and half a video response to his video. I'll leave a link down below so you can check it out. So basically, I lost my faith in the Abrahamic tradition, specifically Christianity, when I was 12 years old. At that time, I was being raised by my grandparents. We were learning, I was in 7th grade, so we were learning cosmology, geology, biology, getting all the introduction to the cell and things of that nature in life and studying life. And that brought up questions in my household, like, how did God make the entire cosmos in a day when, carbon dating and radiometric dating all say that it's like billions of years old? And I remember my grandmother telling me, well, we don't know how long a day was to God. So it may say a day in the Bible, but it could have been hundreds of thousands of years. I was like, alright, I guess I kind of accept that this part could be part of a fable, which isn't meant to be taken literally. It's just a story, a myth within the religion. But if that's part of the myth, what else is part of the myth? Is the talking snake part of the myth? Is the garden a myth? Is Adam and Eve a myth? It just leads to a lot of questions. So, eventually we got to evolution. And funny enough, I never heard the term evolution until the movie came out. And believe it came out actually about the time I was learning about this. So thank God for Hollywood, man, because I would have been totally lost on exactly why we were studying biology in the order that we were studying it. How we went from like the single cell to flatworms to roundworms and fish and amphibians and so on and so forth up to mammals and humans and stuff. So that, I guess, led to more questions, biological questions that my grandparents could not answer. So my grandmother tells me one day, I think you should talk to the pastor, because the pastor used to be a man of science before he found God. I'm not sure exactly what field of science he was in before he made this wonderful discovery of God, but I figure any man of science gotta understand that this is some horse shit, right? So I definitely didn't want to talk to him. I remember being pretty reluctant about it. I remember asking or telling him, like, Grandma wanted me to talk to you about this. So I couldn't tell you how the conversation really started. I couldn't tell you what we talked about until the end. And it just sticks out in my mind till this day. I said something like, what about aliens? Because any man of science would understand. We are one tiny planet in one arm of the Milky Way galaxy that has billions of stars in it. And we are but one galaxy in many galaxies around us. So there has to be the possibility of life on other planets, right? So that's why I asked, well, what about aliens? And his reply shocked me. His reply was, aliens are just demons trying to trick me, and if I've seen one, I need to tell him immediately. And that was pretty much it for me. It's not a great reason for losing faith in the Jesus myth, but I was 12. So I kind of started searching for other religions, because this notion of a God, I mean, like, everyone has this notion of God. So obviously God must be real. I just didn't think that it was the Jesus story. So I went looking for God. and that led me to paganism, and paganism kind of led me to atheism eventually. But I did kind of flip-flop back and forth between pagan and Christian for a couple of years. Only because I've always really enjoyed the social aspect of church. And a lot of my friends that I had were Christian, so I'd wind up going to church with them. And then, converting back, and then thinking about it later and being like, this is some horse shit, or I'll read my Bible, and then I'll be like, this is some bullshit. So I'm not going to sit here and say, like, oh, I completely 100% never turned back to Christianity, because I did. It was the religion that I was raised with. And it took me even a long time to get rid of the hell belief after I completely deconverted from Christianity entirely. And it wasn't until I was well into being a pagan that I actually finally lost that hell belief. Because they really stick that in you when you're a kid, and that indoctrination, that fear stays with you for a while. At least it did to me. Other people lose the hell belief right away. I wasn't one of them. So, I went back and forth between Christianity before I was like, you know what, this is just too much. This is obviously false and fake, and I'm going to stick with, paganism. And then I started looking more into Wicca at the time, and I found that it was based off of ceremonial type magic, which is based off of Christian and Jewish magic, and that kind of frustrated me even more, because everyone talked about like paganism as if it was the old religion, it was pre-Christian, and to discover that ceremonial aspect was taken from Christianity, then how can it be the old tradition, the old religion, if it comes from Christianity instead of the other way around? So I actually did some more digging, and obviously I was wrong in my thinking of that, but it does hold ceremonial traditions, and that was kind of a bit of a turnoff for me. So eventually I switched to, or I found, I guess, the Egyptian pantheon and Egyptian religion. Sorry, I'm looking at my statue of Set right here. I absolutely love this thing. This was a personalized piece. I absolutely love him. So, eventually that led to atheism, because, I've had trouble finding the gods, I guess, in any religion, or I found too many gods, I should say, because I also explored the Greek traditions, and briefly I was interested in the Celtic entities and Celtic mythologies, and even Native American stories like Coyote and whatnot. So yeah, I lost my faith at 12. I kind of flip-flop back and forth just because of the social aspect, but I never really, even as a pagan, I never really connected to a god. I used the Wiccan format, but when it came to the god and goddess, they were as nameless and faceless as those titles are. I never really connected with those entities until they became archetypes, and it just kind of made more sense not having a god. But yeah, that's pretty much my deconversion story. So that's it for tonight, guys. Synapti.